Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it is my final mock draft before the actual draft, so I figured I'd make it a full 7 rounds. It's a lot of work. It took a lot of time. It was really hard. You get to that 5th round, the 6th round, you're like, what is even happening? What will they do? Who needs special teams? What team needs special teams? Let me go check the depth charts. And it's so hard. So make sure to hit the like and the subscribe to, reward me just a little bit for all this hard work. Even if you hate the picks that I make for your team, we'll have a team by team breakdown as we go along. So yeah, let's get right to it, starting with the NFC. Quick disclaimer here, we did make 2 trades. It's very difficult to make trades throughout a 7-round mock. You get kind of lost in the weeds a bit here, so I didn't really do that, but I did make 2 trades that are fairly and relatively obvious at this point. The first one is the Aaron Rodgers trade. Only one pick was affected in this draft. It was the 42nd pick, the first pick in the 2nd round that the Jets have, because it looks like all the other picks are going to be not compensatory, but conditional picks based upon how much Aaron Rodgers plays and how well the Jets do with Aaron Rodgers and all that kind of stuff. So I think that a lot of the draft capital coming in the Aaron Rodgers trade will likely happen in the next 2 drafts to follow, not necessarily this one. And as you'll see as we start here, because we are starting with the NFC, the Arizona Cardinals, they're not staying at 3. They traded back. So let's see what that was all about. So like I said, we're going to go team by team, and the first one's the Arizona Cardinals, and they're the team that trades back. So I have them trading back to number 6 with Detroit. We'll see what Detroit did later. But Detroit doesn't have to necessarily give up the 18th overall pick in order to do this. They can give up that 48th overall pick, as you see there, and then maybe like a 2nd round pick in next year's draft, which will probably be hopefully somewhere in the 50 to 60 range for Detroit. And this is just for them to move up to do probably what you think is the obvious. But we'll start with Arizona. They trade back and they still get Will Anderson Jr., edge rusher out of Alabama. Spoiler alert to what happens in the first 4 picks of this draft. Of course, I did every team, every draft for 1 to 200, whatever, so there won't be any overlap. And then at 34, they have to grab a corner, so they grab Tyreek Stevenson, who was the best one on the board. They have a really depleted cornerback room in general, so I think when you add Will Anderson, you get that alpha in the room for their edge rushing group, because they do have Myjah Sanders and Cameron Thomas, a couple of other guys that don't come to mind immediately. But it's guys that are good number 2s and good rotational guys, and Will Anderson can be that alpha. And then Tyreek Stevenson comes in, and he's almost coming in as cornerback 1 right out the gate, which is terrifying if you're Arizona, but, hey, how you spend your cap space is how you spend your cap space. You end up in this situation. John Michael Schmitz, the center, with that extra 2nd round pick that they got, really help out that offensive line. He's probably the best center in the draft overall. And then they go wide receiver Cedric Tillman, because the likelihood is they are going to get rid of DeAndre Hopkins. I think it's going to be closer to the Amari Cooper trade than people may be thinking that it is, just because his contract is so big. So I don't know that they're going to gain a draft pick. They might move up in a certain round or whatever, like that 213 or that 180 that you see down there, maybe, 20 spots better because of the trade with whoever they trade him to. But, only time will tell with that. It's hard to really pick out the value there. They had a running back, Roschon Johnson, into that rotation, because when you're going to need a really strong running game, especially with Kyler out, so you're going to need to pick that pace up there. You've seen me in previous mocks trade them like Dalvin Cook and stuff. But here it's just adding another running back, and you get a good value. You can find a really good starter in the 3rd round, especially when you have a quarterback like Kyler Murray, where you can run a lot of read option stuff and a lot of RPOs, and that'll open up things for a mid-round running back. Improving the offensive line a bit there with Carter Warren, adding another corner in Kentrell Clark from Louisville. Jaren Hall, bit of a project quarterback. And again, you don't know when Kyler's going to be back. So, you never know. You might be able to have like Colt McCoy and Jaren Hall just sort of compete. And Jaren Hall could be a serviceable backup throughout his career. And then Broderick Martin, defensive line, just looking for depth at that point. for the defensive line. That is depleted with J.J. Watt and Zach Allen both gone. Broderick Martin, he's getting an actual shot as being a 7th-round pick to be able to come in and perhaps get some significant playing time throughout the year. So here we are with the Atlanta Falcons. They go Tyree Wilson. I think it's pretty obvious if he's there that this is going to be the pick. He really suits that system and what they're attempting to do. He can play across that entire front four as well, which will open up opportunities for Arnold Ebiketie and for Lorenzo Carter and some of the other guys that they have there. They don't really have a true alpha guy there right now. Then they go Jahmyr Gibbs. I think it's more like a best player available type of a deal. There, they pass on Bijan in the first round. I think getting Jahmyr Gibbs here creates a good dynamic in their backfield with Tyler Algier. Marvin Mims, wide receiver. They don't really have great receivers there. Marvin Mims will be a little bit different than what they have right now. Jacqueline Roy, again, playing on that defensive line. True interior there, unlike Wilson, who can be the edge, come in and play the interior maybe on passing downs, that type of a deal. Ivan Pace, linebacker, again, improving that middle of the field. And then some depth offensive linemen. I got them grabbing Max Duggan because I thought that was fun to grab at 225. It's really low risk. Comes in, backs up Desmond Ridder. Wouldn't that be fun? And then if Max Duggan somehow beats him out for the starting job, I think Arthur Smith would really like having Max Duggan as a quarterback option for him. He can come in and run a package every now and then if Desmond Ridder gets injured or fizzles out during a game. I think it would be fun. Moving on here to Carolina, and they take Bryce Young number 1 overall. I think it's pretty much locked in there. I think I'm going with Keon White. He's going a little higher than I would like, but this is a little bit more. Try to be predictive here, as always. And he got invited to the draft, which says that the NFL is probably quite high on him. So this might be low for him to go. Then I got Jaden Reed, wide receiver. They got to get that wide receiver room with some depth in there and some youth. And then Israel Abanikanda. Is that how you say it? Wakanda forever. Running back out of Pittsburgh. He's a different type of back than what they have. They got Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, who are actually quite similar. More similar than I think people think. And I think Israel can come in and be a different type of back. I think that him and Bryce Young could potentially have some sneaky chemistry that could lead to some really explosive plays on the offense. Then DeMarvin Overshown, linebacker. Some depth there. And then Josh Wiley, I think, as another sneaky good player that they can introduce into this offense that could really turn out to be a great player, especially with the RPO game that I think is going to be run quite often, considering you got Bryce Young at the quarterback position in this scenario. Those quick little sticks by a tight end, I think getting the ball in Josh Wiley's hands could be quite effective. So here are the Chicago Bears. They're going to want to trade out of 9. Couldn't really think of a trade partner at that point. Didn't want to get too crazy and off the beaten path here because it was 7 rounds. So I just got him staying back, going Peter Skoronski, who graded out amazing in his last year of college, can play all 5 positions, and the value there is really high. Then their next 3 picks, their day 2 picks, are that defensive line that's extremely depleted. So I'm grabbing Foskey, Keanu Benton, and Byron Young from Tennessee, not Byron Young from Alabama. So they got 2 edge rushers out of this deal and an interior defensive lineman. Keanu Benton, very similar to David Onyemata. And they got Young and Foskey, who could actually potentially both start. One of them for sure would start, and the other one would likely be a situational pass rusher, perhaps, depending on who else is in that edge room that perhaps might outperform them. But this could be very, very significant moving forward. I also got him grabbing Moro Ojamo later on in this draft. So they theoretically, even though you don't particularly maybe want that as a coach, theoretically you could have 4 rookies starting on that defensive line. The defensive line is not good so far with a lot of the depth that they have. Got him grabbing some guys in the secondary there. Jair Brown from Penn State and Kayub Luke Kelly from Stanford. just gain some depth in that secondary. Might be able to find a starter in there, get some significant playing time again. They're in a big rebuild, so, I think it's going to be, you can get some rookies having some significant playing time this year. Sean Tucker, I think, will be a great number 2 back. Perhaps could take over as the starter throughout the year. And then Jake Andrews is just a depth piece on the offensive line, on the interior. But a lot of focus for Matt Eberflus on the defensive side because they did dedicate a lot of draft capital last year and in the trade back getting DJ Moore to the offense, so they can, once they got Pierce Croncy, I think focusing on the defense would be a high priority for them. On to America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Michael Mayer, the tight end, seems that they really love him and that he's going to be the pick there, which wouldn't surprise me. He's, I think, very well suited if they want to run the ball with Tony Pollard and this new running back I'm grabbing, Zach Charbonnet. Having a blocking tight end like Michael Mayer would be quite important. Owen Popoi, linebacker. They always seem to draft a linebacker in like that 3rd to 5th round range just to keep the depth there. Nick Broker, interior offensive lineman, could play some tackle. It's a good little depth piece there. Cameron Mitchell, cornerback, adding to that room there. DJ Johnson, another edge guy. And then Nesta Jade Silvera, who's nominated for best name in the draft, playing on the interior defensive line out of Arizona State. Again, just more depth, kind of like DJ Johnson and Cameron Mitchell, just depth on that defense at each level. And here's the Detroit Lions trade, and they're trading up to number 3 to get Anthony Richardson. It just makes all the sense in the world for them, really. I know people love Jared Goff, and I think look to the Kansas City Chiefs. They loved what Alex Smith was doing, but there was a ceiling to that. And I think Jared Goff, there is a ceiling to him as well, quite similar to Alex Smith. And then they moved on to Patrick Mahomes, who was a high upside guy, maybe need to sit a year. And then before he was ready, and then get behind a good culture and coaching staff. And I think that Detroit can maybe mimic that with Anthony Richardson. Have this rookie year for him to sort of gather in his accuracy, really channel what he seems to be good at, which is being a smart player. That seems to come up a lot with him. Then they get Deonte Banks, cornerback there at 18. That fills out their room, completes their room long term now that they trade Jeff Okudah. One of those two picks has to be a cornerback at this point. Then Tuli Tuipulotu, sort of a bigger edge guy, can play some 3-4 defensive end. I think he'd just be a really good piece to fit in on that defense. Then Tucker Kraft, a tight end out of South Dakota State. At some point, you got to grab a tight end. You have to have like a true starting serviceable tight end. I think Tucker Kraft could be that. And this is a good range to get him, where you're not blowing high-end capital on a guy who might see 40% of the snaps, but I think they could be significant in his rookie year. Brain Daniels, just some depth on the offensive line. Marty Mapu, another guy nominated for best name in the draft. Some linebacker depth for them. They seem to really like Anzalone, so Anzalone and Rodriguez might be the two starters, and then Mapu can come in, play some special teams, and be a backup. And then I'm grabbing two receivers in a row, Raheem Jarrett from Maryland and Andre Iosivas from Princeton, with Jameson Williams out for 6 weeks because of the gambling, with Quintez Cephas cut altogether. It does open up for a depth wide receiver to come in, maybe play some special teams. So you get these two guys here. Raheem Jarrett was looked at as a day 2 pick early on in this draft cycle, like early on in the college season. So, you might be able to channel some of that potential or that projection that was happening for him with the good coaching staff that they have there in Detroit. And here are the Green Bay Packers. They start off at 15, taking Nolan Smith, edge rusher from Georgia. Then the second round, with the pick they get for Aaron Rodgers, they take Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver out of Tennessee. Comes in, plays in the slot with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. I think it's going to be really cool. And then they get Luke Musgrave, just just sticking it to Rodgers. Got him double dipping in the tight end class actually with Musgrave and Zach Kuntz. Then you get Antonio Johnson, defensive back from Texas A&M, can play some safety, can play some slot. Riley Moss, shout out to the white corners, comes in, depth corner. Ricky Stromberg, some depth on the offensive line. They take Cameron Young, some depth on the defensive line. Isaiah Land, who's a linebacker, kind of slash edge, can be a blitzing off-ball linebacker for them, sort of like a backup to Quay Walker. I think got Jalen Cropper, just a depth receiver, and then Gurridge, another depth offensive lineman. Working those guys and see if they can make the team. Perhaps Cropper probably more looking at the special teams. But yeah, sticking it to Aaron Rodgers with that Jalen Hyatt, Luke Musgrave pick in the second round, just staring at him as they send the card in. It's like, and in the pick they acquired for Aaron Rodgers, the Green Bay Packers select Jalen Hyatt. 15 touchdowns in college last year, dominated the college game. Suck it, Aaron. But they have to do that. They do have to do this, which makes me think that they won't. But there's, Gunakunts is his name. Is that the GM's name? His job is on the line this year. His job depends on Jordan Love looking like he can be a top 15 quarterback in the NFL minimum by the end of this season. So you have to make sure he has all the tools at his disposal. So that's why you double dip in the tight end class like this. That's why you get Jalen Hyatt, who can just burn down the field, like Christian Watson, run some crossers, let Jalen Hyatt get out there and get some mismatches with all that speed. His job's dependent on this, so that's why you have to be aggressive in this way. So here are the LA Rams. I got them going BJ Ojulari with that first pick. They were willing to trade 2 first-rounders for Brian Burns. So edge rusher, is going to be the first thing that they go for. They have just a terrible defense in general, which is why Deion Henley, Ja'Cory Bennett, I have them picking. All those guys could start day one. Every single one of them. And then you get into more of their depth stuff on day 3. Grabbing some guys for the offense. Salvaderi, Charlie Jones, Muhammad Ibrahim, Alex Forsyth. And then going with some more depth on the defense in the secondary with Merriweather, the defensive line with Redmond, another corner with Starling Thomas, and another edge guy in Robert Beal. All these guys, especially the defensive guys, the 7 defensive guys I have them taking, they all have a chance to make the team. They all have a chance to get significant snaps because you go look at that depth chart. The Rams are going to be absolutely terrible next year. Terrible next year. Good thing they have their own first-round pick because they're likely going to be picking in the top 5, top 6, kind of like they would have this year had they not traded the pick to Detroit. They're bad. They are so bad. Here are the Minnesota Vikings. Not a lot of picks. I'm grabbing Emmanuel Forbes. They need the cornerback depth. I'm grabbing Rashee Rice. Kind of fell a bit. It's a good receiver to add in there. Can get some significant snaps next to Justin Jefferson. Dorian Thompson-Robinson seems to be a name that's flying around for a lot of teams, so maybe they go in there, they snag him, kind of like they did with Kellen Mond. Try to get a development guy behind Kirk Cousins, see what you got in him. Then you get Kenny McIntosh, good backup. Maybe Dalvin Cook is gone, so you want to get some depth there in the running game to get a good rotation. And O'Shawn Mathis, another edge rusher from Nebraska. You got Davenport on a 1-year deal. Zadarius Smith wants out, so you're probably going to need to add to that edge room a bit. Here's the New Orleans Saints. In their first 2 picks, they go with the defensive line. Kalijah Kancey and Felix Anudike-Uzomah. They need to replenish that defensive line. And I think that these are significant moves and instant impact moves that they can make. Devin Ashane, running back Texas A&M. What's happening with Alvin Kamara? Don't really know. So you're going to need to maybe replenish that running back room faster than maybe anticipated. Kayshon Boutte falls. Why not pick him up? There's some good upside there with him. You just worry about some character stuff. Jalen Jones slips in this draft. People had him projected to go quite high. Didn't really perform all that well in workouts and throughout the college season, so he's going to slip a bit, but I think he's got some good potential there. Jarrett Patterson, the center from Notre Dame. It's a good little spot for him. Mohamed Diabate, a linebacker, depth there, and Quindell Johnson, safety, out of Memphis. Again, just adding some depth across the team. They need to start adding two of these positions in the draft because they are in real cap trouble over the next couple of years for sure. And here's my New York Giants, and boy, was I quite happy with the guys that were on the board that I was able to pick for them. I'd be really happy if this was the draft they had, starting with Quentin Johnston, wide receiver, TCU. Immediately comes in, number one receiver on the team. You can put Darius Slayton on the outside, then you can work in Sterling Shepard and Wan'Dale Robinson in those slot roles. Joe Tippmann comes in, immediately the starting center. Love that. Garrett Williams, a good corner that can go across the entire secondary. Really like that. Running back Zach Evans, some depth there just in case you don't know what's going to happen with Saquon, but it's always good to have that like day 3 running back, in the backfield on a cheap deal, because you can really get some quality back there as well. And I think that Brian Daboll did a lot with not as much at the running back position in Buffalo. Then you get some defensive depth here with Ali Gay on the edge, Terrell Smith, another corner, Trey Dean, another defensive back there to play in the secondary, Ventrell Miller, another Florida player to play some linebacker depth, Jonah Tavai, an interior defensive lineman, some defensive line depth there, and then some more offensive line depth with Trevor Reed. Maybe get a cheaper option there than maybe somebody that we already have that's like a backup rotational 8th or 9th offensive lineman. But overall, if this was the Giants draft, ecstatic. I'd be so ecstatic by this. Here are the Philadelphia Eagles. Lucas Van Ness. It's Joe Doug. It's Howie Roseman. He's gonna go trenches. He's gonna go high value picks here. Lucas Van Ness allows them to get out of some contracts that are really heavy priced, the 1-year deals next year. Osiris Torrance comes in. Again, some more depth on the offensive line. Comes in, day 1 starter. Allows Cam Jurgens to be that 4th interior guy to eventually take over for Travis Kelce at center. Jack Campbell slipped a bit. So I think bringing him in, pairing him up with Nakobe Dean could be a really sneaky good linebacking group for a couple years to come now. And a cheaper option because it's all rookie contracts. Sidney Brown coming in. This is if they don't figure out a way to get Budda Baker, which I don't think they will. And then some depth guys, Bryce Ford Wheaton, Jarek Bernard Converse, guys competing for special team spots there. But there, again, 4 picks there in the first 3 rounds. Getting 4 guys who could potentially all be day 1 starters. The rich just keep getting richer for Philadelphia. And up next is the Seattle Seahawks, and they just go Jalen Carter with that first pick. I think Pete Carroll thinks that it's no big deal, and if it is a big deal, he can handle it. He can reel in Jalen Carter and really get the potential and not have to worry about any of this crap with his personal life. Then they grab Zay Flowers, instant impact guy, can eventually be the full-time replacement for Tyler Lockett. Just fantastic. Then Steve Avila comes in. He'll play guard right away, that right guard position, next to Evan Brown at center, Damian Lewis at the other end. And then I was like, why not take Hendon Hooker? He's not going to play his first year. You got Geno on a contract that you can get out of pretty easily after this one season, even though it was a 3-year deal. If Geno comes out and last year was a fluke, you got Hendon Hooker, who can come in year 2 and play and be probably very serviceable. I like it. I like the fit. It could happen at 37. I just avoided it because I thought Avila was more important for them. But yeah, Hendon Hooker. I think that Seattle's the spot for him. And then you got Zach Harrison, edge rusher, coming in. They got to get an edge in there. So they get edge with Harrison. And then they get Jalen Carter sort of to help out that pass rush from all aspects of the field. Then I'm grabbing Chris Smith, who didn't do himself any favors in the lead up to this draft and all that. But I think that if there's a team out there that has a good defensive scheme that could really get the potential out of him, it's Seattle. So they could have a sneaky good young secondary led by Tariq Woolen and Chris Smith. I really like it. Then you got Dwayne McBride, running back. He'll come in, back up Kenneth Walker. Mekhi Gardner, corner. Again, getting a corner, getting some secondary guys on that day 3. Sort of the Pete Carroll special going on here. Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, Brandon Browning, all these late round guys that make up a good secondary. Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant, Mekhi Gardner, Chris Smith. Could that be it? Maybe. Then you get a depth receiver, Dontavian Wicks, and a depth offensive lineman in Connor Galvin. Here are the San Francisco 49ers. Tough team to pick for. Really tough. Maybe found them 2 starters right out the gate with Jordan Battle and Andrew Voorhees. And Mike Morris as well, perhaps. Maybe somehow landed them 3 starters with those late day 2 picks. Maybe. You never know with this coaching staff what they can pull out. But a lot of it was just getting depth at key positions on the team for the most part after grabbing 3 guys who could potentially be day 1 contributors. Battle Voorhees, you got Morris who can maybe be like an early down edge guy, bump into the inside perhaps, gives you some versatility. And after that, Trice, Hayes, Scruggs, guys at key positions on the team, corner and offensive line, some depth that they do need. Trey Tucker, sneaky special teams guy perhaps. Robinson, another defensive line guy. Howden, another safety. And then Braden Willis, maybe a special teams guy. Bakersville, another potential special teams guy. Get cheaper with those late day 3 picks for the special teams. Maybe find a diamond in the rough for a team that's so deep and so good and ready to make another run. Here's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I got them going. Again, they got some cap issues, so I think that these first 2-3 picks have to be at key positions of value, which is why Myles Murphy, who did work out very well, and I think he did great for his draft stock, going to get himself into that top 20 again conversation. Perfect for Tampa Bay to come up and pick. Then they get Julius Brents, a cornerback, and they get Tyler Scott, wide receiver, to help out that aging wide receiver room that they have. And he comes in, he could be that a number 3 wide receiver almost right away. Then they get Aiden O'Connell, who will come in, be a backup quarterback, be that 3rd quarterback on the roster, compete with Kyle Trask perhaps for that backup role. Because it seems like Baker's sort of got the starting role, at least for this year, locked down for now. Perhaps a short leash for him. Keaton Mitchell, some depth at running back. Jordan McFadden, some depth across the offensive line. Will Mallory, a tight end. Again, could be a sneaky pick here to get some significant playing time. Cam Jones, a linebacker, could be sneaky pick to get some playing time, depending on what they do with Devin White. And then Dante Stills, who never really reached that full potential, just being an undersized interior guy. But in a 3-4 system can, be a 3-4 defensive end for them. Here are the Washington Commanders. And again, I got them going Joey Porter Jr. with their first pick. And then Drew Sanders at 47. Pair him next to Jamin Davis. Brenton Strange, a tight end out of Penn State. Saw him get some second-round love from Mel Kiper, which tells me that he's probably getting some buzz to be like that late day 2, early day 3 pick from somebody. So I threw it out there for Washington, knowing how much Eric Bieniemy loves to use the tight end. Then I'm grabbing Clayton Tune, a quarterback. He'll be in there competing with Howell and Brissett for that 3rd quarterback role. He could easily be, even though he's being picked much sooner, he could easily be the Brock Purdy of this draft. Just find his way into the starting lineup and just manage a game to get a team to some modicum of success. Chase Brown coming in, perhaps to be the long-term backup for Brian Robinson with Antonio Gibson's contract coming up. Jackson Kirkland, a tackle, can play inside, some depth there. Earl Bostic, same sort of logic there. Some depth on the offensive line. And Rezjon Wright, so another cornerback, but being picked, for some special teams contributions. Moving on to the Baltimore Ravens, we're now into the AFC, and let's say Lamar Jackson stays. So you reward him by getting Jordan Addison, wide receiver, USC. He, keep adding to that wide receiver room. You got Odell, who's on a 1-year deal. You don't really know what he's going to do. And if he overperforms, well, you have the cap room to keep him. There's a lot going on there. And I think getting Jordan Addison, who's a great route runner, a guy you can get the ball out to quickly, a guy who knows how to get open, very different than what you got in Rashad Bateman. I think it'll just be really good for the receiver room and, a sign of good faith for Lamar Jackson. They get Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, cornerback out of TCU. He could come and see some significant snaps early on. Tank Bigsby, a running back again, get somebody for Lamar Jackson. And then adding some depth across the defense with Dylan Horton at the edge and DeMarco Hellams at the defensive back safety position. Had to get the Alabama player in there for the Baltimore Ravens. It felt weird with them not having one. And here are the Buffalo Bills, and their first pick, Anton Harrison, comes in. That's a plug-and-play right tackle right there for you. Trenton Simpson, plug-and-play linebacker, replacing Tremaine Edmonds. Luke Weipler, who took a bit of a tumble for me, but a plug-and-play interior offensive lineman. You could have 2 rookies starting on the offensive line, theoretically, at the beginning of the year, and it's going to improve the offensive line drastically. Then Parker Washington, wide receiver, getting some buzz. Don't really know where he's going to go. He could, I think, if anyone could be the Wan'Dale Robinson of this draft, where, you're expecting him to go like maybe late day 2, early day 3, but ends up early day 2, early in that second round like Wan'Dale did with the Giants. I think Parker Washington is going to be that guy because it seems that teams don't really know. There's no consistency in where teams seem to be ranking him, even where the draft community ranks him. Byron Young, an interior guy, interior defensive lineman, help out with that. And then Anthony Johnson Jr., cornerback, Iowa State. Some depth there in the secondary that they needed, but I couldn't really find a spot for it until right there. So you might just be looking at a special teams guy and have to look to get younger at the safety position next year's draft or through a free agency next year. DeMar Hamlin apparently is going to play. Without going too far into it, I think you got to be crazy if you're Buffalo in the NFL to let him play again. You have to be absolutely out of your mind because if something happens to him now, there's no way there's no way around it. There's no way around. I don't think he might be cleared to play. I can't see it happening. And here are the Cincinnati Bengals, and Dalton Kincaid is another one of those players where it's like he could be a mid-first round pick to a late first round pick. He fell for me, and the Bengals happy to scoop him up. Then they grab DJ Turner. Keep adding to that cornerback room. I keep bringing it up. I brought it up multiple times. People gave me crap in my Bengals offseason predictions video where I brought up what their potential moves were going to be moving forward in terms of who they're going to retain specifically in their secondary and what those contracts were going to look like for Joe Burrow and for Jamar Chase. And then Jalen Hurts signs a giant contract, which means Joe Burrow is going to sign something very similar to that. So shout out to that guy if he's going to be watching this video. Just admit you were wrong. Just admit you were wrong and I was right. I'll take the L on Jesse Bates. You got to take the L on pretty much everything else I said about the Bengals and their future plans for contracts. But yeah, Chidobe Awuzie is coming up and Mike Hilton. You're probably only going to be able to keep one of them from the looks of it just because, they had front-loaded deals when they got signed. So right now their cap hit, I think, is like $6 or $7 million a piece. Unless you get some giant discount on them, you're only going to be able to keep one of them. And I think you can bring in DJ Turner, you have Cam Taylor-Britt there, and it gives you, again, sort of like when they were able to let Eli Apple go this last year because they had Awuzie, Cameron Taylor-Britt, and Mike Hilton. Now you can maybe let Awuzie go, maybe Mike Hilton go, and then you got DJ Turner to come in and fill that role as well. Daniel Scott is probably the best true single high cover 3 safety in the draft, like the most pure at that position. So I think you bring him in and you let Dax Hill, your first round pick from last year, sort of wander around as like a slot guy, a linebacker, 8th guy in the box, a corner. Like you give him so much more versatility, and Daniel Scott can be sort of like the guy that takes that role long term as a true single high safety in the middle of the field. Wanya Morris fills some offensive line depth that they still are going to need. Keandre Miller comes in as some running back depth. Dante Demas, who sort of fell off much like his teammate did, Raheem Jarrett, throughout the draft process. I think that would be interesting to see him come in and be part of that wide receiver room and develop underneath some of the real stars there. And then John Gaines, some more offensive line depth. I think that you just grab the offensive line depth where you can and give guys a chance to make the team, give guys a chance to shock you, and hopefully get some value out of these late round picks in significant positions. Here are the Cleveland Browns, and my first pick for them is Kobe Turner, and this is based solely on the Perion Winfrey situation. He's not going to be on that team. There's no way. They got way too much legal issues going on at the quarterback position, way too much there. If they keep another guy who's out there beating women, dude, it ain't going to happen. So Kobe Turner. And then I got Isaiah McGuire, an edge rusher, sort of repairing that defense of front four, adding some depth in there. McGuire, a little bit of a different player than what you have in Alex Wright. So he can be maybe more of a true Jadeveon Clowney replacement. They got Henry To'oTo'o, who was starting to tumble for me, and I was like, why not grab some depth there at linebacker, get younger there, allow them to move on from some veteran contracts. They haven't really ever had a true great inside linebacker there in a long time. Then I'm grabbing running back Deuce Vaughn. He sort of mixes in there with Nick Chubb and who's the other guy? He was my guy when he got picked too. Now I feel like crap. But he's great. Demetric Felton. He mixes in there with Demetric Felton. More of a true running back than Felton is. Felton's sort of like he's like that poor man's Christian McCaffrey almost. But I think he could be set up to have a big year. But then add Deuce Vaughn in there as a more true running back, even though he's much more of like a speed receiving back as well. Trey Palmer, wide receiver. Keep adding to that room. You got all that money in Deshaun Watson. And I got Brandon Joseph, who is falling like crazy. He's somebody that had so much potential, and I think he's going to end up now being a day 3 pick, if not completely undrafted, just the way he's not being talked about at all. And I think that he can end up on a team and just be one of these great value picks, kind of like Chris Smith, sort of in the same vein as Chris Smith. They got McClendon Curtis, some offensive line depth, and then Darrell Luter, cornerback of South Carolina, likely just a special teams guy coming in there. And here are the Denver Broncos. Boy, oh boy. Oh, this team's a nightmare. I don't care if Sean Payton's their coach. He makes them a top 5 coaching staff in the NFL for my deep dive series. Spoiler alert. But they got nothing else. Yaya Diaby, Darius Rush come in, immediately help out that pass defense right out the gate. And then I grabbed 2 depth offensive linemen, Jalen Duncan, who could be something, was mocked early as a first-round pick in the college football season and ended up being slowly just falling down boards. And I think that the offensive line depth gets so bad at the tackle position, like there's such a clear cutoff after Matthew Bergeron, that maybe a guy like Jalen Duncan, teams will maybe look back and be like, he did have the tools. Maybe we can get it out of him. And then he's under no obligation to start on this team because they do have Garrett Bowles. They do have Mike McGlinchey. So he can be sort of a swing tackle for them. And then Zavala, sort of same thing on the interior, where they got Quinn Miners and Ben Powers on the interior now. So he can sort of be a swing guy for them as well. Then Servosia Dennis, another guy, best name of the draft nominee, comes in, plays linebacker, can be a 3rd or 4th linebacker on the team. And holy crap, here are the Houston Texans. Lots of picks, lots to go over. I got them going CJ Stroud. There's all these rumors, and I'm saying smokescreen. I think there's teams out there that want him to fall so that they can trade up at a cheaper price and get him. Maybe the Titans, trying to be like, no, don't take Stroud. He's terrible. And then they go, okay, fine, we'll take Anthony Richardson. Then the Titans trade up with Arizona and take Stroud. I think it's something like that. But if you do end up with Stroud here, then it does make sense to take Jackson Smith-Njigba at 12 because you do need a receiver. It may not be the most pressing need on the roster, but if you do have CJ Stroud, then yeah, get Jackson Smith-Njigba. Pair them up. instant chemistry, and it gives your offense something right out the gate that you can at least rely on. And that's I think that's really important for them. And then Adetomoa Adebayor getting a lot of buzz. I think D'Amico Ryans would love him. He's a guy that can play defensive end. You can kick him inside on passing downs. I think D'Amico Ryans would love to have him. And then Clark Phillips is another guy. He's kind of undersized, but you throw him out there, he can be the long-term replacement for Desmond King. Dorian Williams gained some buzz for the linebacker. You can pair him with Christian Harris long-term, and then you hopefully have a good linebacking group. D'Amico Ryans can really develop linebackers, obviously. And then you get into the day 3 with Tyler Steen, offensive tackle, can be a swing tackle for them. Then you, again, depth guys. Fehoko, another edge guy. Gerard Clark, an interior guy. True interior guy. Fehoko, true edge guy. So you got Adebayor sort of like can do both. And then you get guys who can come in and be depth at very specific sets on the defensive line. Evan Hull comes in as a depth running back, second, third string running back, special teams contributor. Jay Ward, sort of the same thing. Puka Nakua, again, name guys are awesome in this draft. Antonio Maffey, another name guy. Just gain some depth there on day 3. Trying to find, again, diamonds in the rough at some key positions. Wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, secondary. And here are the Indianapolis Colts, and I got them taking Will Levis. I think regardless, if there's more than just Will Levis available at 4, they'll go with Will Levis. Cam Smith, cornerback. Had some first-round buzz, sort of falling out of that, but they need the corner help, so go on and grab him. Michael Wilson, wide receiver, Stanford, comes in. You put him out there with Alec Pierce, with Michael Pittman. Good little 1-2-3 punch there at wide receiver. Carl Brooks, some depth on the interior defensive line. Noah Sewell, who had some first-round buzz for a while, didn't do himself any favors, but he can come in. And that linebacking group with now Okereke gone is not that deep, so he could potentially get some significant playing time as a linebacker on this team. Warren McClendon, some depth there on the offensive line. Davis Allen, a sneaky pick again. I say bring up sneaky picks all the time. He's a sneaky pick that can come in, be an instant contributor in this offense. Grant Dubois, depth guy for special teams. And Thomas Incoom, depth guy at a position of value there on the edge. Here are the Jacksonville Jaguars and Brian Branch. It's a boring pick because everyone seems to be doing it now. But once people started doing it, it made the world of sense. Sort of like if the Detroit Lions get a corner at 6 that they take Quentin Johnson at 18. It just makes all the world of sense. Sort of like that, but with Brian Branch, if he's there at 24, you have to take him. He's going to come in. He's going to start right away. He'll play slot corner right away, eventually be a safety, a versatile defensive back, play across the entire secondary. It's just perfect for you. And then you get Cody Mock, who can come in, play guard right away, have some tackle capabilities. Andre Carter, going to fall a bit, but they aren't bringing back Josh Allen from the looks of it. So maybe they get a little bit cheaper at the edge position. And Andre Carter could be a big part of that. And then I think eventually next year, if they don't bring back Josh Allen, they're going to be looking to draft one anyway. They got A.T. Perry, wide receiver. Different type of receiver than what they got. Keandre Coburn, interior defensive lineman. I really like that. He can come in, instant contributor. Cameron Latou, sneaky. All these tight ends are going to be like really sneaky picks because you never really know, because tight ends are usually drafted based upon traits and how the offensive coordinator finds ways to use them, and it can make them real stars real early, or guys who you think could be tremendous don't really end up being great because the way the offensive coordinator decides to use them in comparison to other guys at that position. So again, could be sneaky. Alex Austin, cornerback depth. Deneric Prince, running back depth. And Malik Cunningham, quarterback depth. I like him. I thought he was coming out next year. He was available for me to pick this year. So I don't know. Maybe he didn't declare and he was still in the draft simulator. But if he is available and he would be going this late, Not a bad backup option to have. A good developmental guy. Here are the Kansas City Chiefs. DeJuan Jones right out the gate. Boom. Starting right tackle. Siaki Ika. Boom. Starting defensive tackle next to Chris Jones. Jonathan Mingo. Boom. Starter. Different type of wide receiver than what they got out there. KJ Henry could be a starter. Luke Schoonmaker, a developmental tight end behind Travis Kelce. Eric Gray, some running back depth there. Mekhi Blackman, some cornerback depth. Anthony Orji. Again, the names in this draft are amazing. Anthony Orji, Henry Bainavalu, some depth on the offensive line. Chamari Connor, just great names. I'm a names guy apparently now. I love them. You never really know Kansas City. I think it's just getting some depth at certain positions that are a little bit weaker and then finding ways to use guys on special teams and situational football stuff. Here's the LA Chargers. Bijan Robinson. He won't fall further than this at all. They got Nathaniel Dell, Tank Dell as he is nicknamed, wide receiver out there. Again, getting guys for Justin Herbert at some important positions, allowing you to move on from bigger contracts. Gervin Dexter, interior defensive lineman, might be a little early for him, but they need help on that interior. Eli Ricks taking a tumble out of being perceived as a top corner, sort of like Keely Ringo was, and then he sort of fell, and he fell, and he fell, and he fell. But I think that, early day 3 could be where he finally stops. Ronnie Hickman, a safety, coming. I think he can get some sneaky, significant playing time. Then you got D. Winters, linebacker TCU, depth linebacker, special teams guy, and then Tyler Lacey, again, because that interior defensive line is so bad, sort of taking a swing there with your last pick. Maybe you find something in him that can make him, a contributor throughout the season, even if it's just on early downs or passing downs. Find something to use on that interior defensive line because you really need it. And here are the Vegas Raiders. Devon Witherspoon, cornerback, Illinois. Boom. Run that up. Run it up. You need a starting corner. Big time alpha corner, number 1. Lock it in. It's him or Christian Gonzalez. Then you get Brian Breezy, interior defensive lineman. Falls a bit. Got to go up and get him. Sneaky good. Then Sam Laporta, more of a long-term tight end. They got Hooper. I think they got O.J. Howard as well. But, Laporta comes in, can work his way safely into the offense, and I think eventually probably take over as the number 1 guy. Jartavius Martin, safety, again, helping in that secondary. Tanner McKee falls as far as he will fall. That's the Raiders at 109, early day 3. Put him behind Jimmy Garoppolo, develop him, and maybe with a little bit extra development at the pro level, he can reach the level that people were sort of expecting him to reach, which was a potential first-round talent in this year's draft, at least at the beginning of the college football season. That was the case. Emil Ekiyor and Sidney Sow, some offensive line depth there. They don't really need, it's like they're in a weird position where unless it's Skoronski or Paris Johnson, I don't see them really going offensive line because I don't think they can get somebody who's going to be a true starter. But Ekiyor and Sow could sort of compete during training camp and maybe sneak their way into the starting lineup, or at the very least be a swing guard and a swing tackle. Habakkuk Baldonado, edge rusher, get some depth there. Ronnie Bell, wide receiver, get a little bit more depth at the wide receiver position. Get an extra corner there in Miles Brooks, special teams contributor. Tavian Thomas, same sort of thing. Michael Jones, linebacker, same sort of thing. When you get into those 200s, you're looking for either a guy that can play special teams and potentially be a diamond in the rough guy. And I think that those are 3 really good contributors right there. Dolphins don't have a lot going on, but they get Matthew Bergeron, who will come in, be the starting right tackle day 1. Tyjae Spears, again, sneaky pick here, will probably come in, be 3rd running back on the roster, but I think by the end of the year, he'll be the full-blown starter. I think he's got all that potential, and this offense will really suit him for that. Anthony Bradford, offensive line depth. You really need it. And then Keydron Smith, guy for the secondary, special teams contributor. Dolphins did all their work really in free agency and trades with Jalen Ramsey and in drafts prior and trades prior with, the likes of Tyreek Hill trading up for Jalen Waddle, stuff like that. The New England Patriots, and it's Christian Gonzalez, falls as far as he'll go. Corners kind of tumbled for me a bit, which is really the first time it's happened. It's really wild. It's amazing what that Detroit trade could do to make the cornerback class really fall. Because the second Detroit gets up there and takes a quarterback, it sort of throws the cornerback class into limbo a bit. Especially if you don't take a corner with the Patriots, you go trenches, or with the Eagles. It really opens things up. And Christian Gonzalez, but this is as far as Gonzalez will fall anyway. I think Belichick would be salivating to take him. Josh Downs, wide receiver, comes in. You need juice on that offense. They don't have stars anymore. Get some juice on that offense. Josh Downs can really contribute that. Blake Freeland, a tackle. I think his performance at the Senior Bowl when he was kind of getting bull rushed damaged his value a lot, but you look at the way he graded out in college. He could be the real steal at the tackle position this year. He could be that, and I'll bring him up, Michael Onwenu, who the Patriots also drafted. It could sort of maybe be the same thing for Blake Freeland. I think this is real sneaky good. He could be the real steal. He's going to be one of my guys in the potential steals, depending on where he ends up, of course. If he ends up here in New England where he gets a chance to potentially start, watch out for him. Zach Pickens, interior guy. Patriots got to go with that. They go with Nick Herbig, who's sort of like an edge/linebacker. Olu Oluwatimi, the Michigan center. I think he can come in. Again, potential to maybe start at one of the guard positions, depending on if they want to move Onwenu to right tackle and then not have Trent Brown. There's a lot of potential there. Nick Hampton, again, edge guy. Payne Durham, tight end. They always do that. Rashad Torrance for the secondary. Jane Hazelwood for special teams. And I got him going Stetson Bennett the fourth. Quarterback Georgia. If he's going to get picked, he needs to get picked by a team that sort of looks at his traits and goes, maybe we can make this work. And nobody looks at traits and goes, maybe we can make this work quite like the Patriots. So why not? Why not have him come in, be quarterback 3, and potentially be the Brock Purdy? I brought this up with Clayton Tune for Washington. Potentially be the Brock Purdy of this draft. And here are the New York Jets. Not a lot of picks, but they do trade for Aaron Rodgers, so there is that. So with the 42nd pick, they get Aaron Rodgers. Then they have Darnell Wright, true right tackle, comes in, starts right away. Mozzie Smith comes in, starts right away next to Quinnen Williams. Robert Saleh going to the trenches, getting the offensive line for Rodgers to mix in with all those weapons he has now. And then you got Mozzie Smith comes in, starts right away on that defensive line. Fantastic. Jamie Robinson, safety, can be a third safety on the roster with Jordan Whitehead and Chuck Clark there. Robinson comes in, can be that third guy. Chuck Clark, can come up, play some linebacker, play some slot perhaps, so opens things up there. Then you got Yasir Abdullah, some linebacker depth, Brenton Cox, some edge depth there. Kind of like last year, Jets are going to have a very top-heavy draft. They only picked in the first 4 rounds last year, and I think, with another 5 picks here, you get Aaron Rodgers. Just look to get something for him on the offensive line, then get some defensive depth, really. I think that's got to be the strategy. Here are the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got them going Broderick Jones because Darnell Wright was off the board. So they go with Broderick Jones, comes in, day 1 starter tackle. Will McDonald comes in. I think he could overtake Alex Highsmith, and Highsmith is in the final year of his deal, and I know he played great. I hear Pittsburgh, Alex Highsmith, he played so good. But first of all, you need a third edge guy, a third true edge guy who can play in a 3-4 defense, number 1. Number 2, if Alex Highsmith sucks and it was a 1-year fluke, guess what? You got Will McDonald in there. And guess what? If Alex Highsmith is amazing and is going to cost you $25 million a year next year and you can't afford that, you can let him go and feel good about it. So it's a win-win situation either way. Then you got Keely Ringo, corner, hearing safety. Some teams see him as a safety. I think Keely Ringo can get picked to play corner early on and potentially move to safety, need be. Colby Wooden, help out that interior defensive line. Keep rebuilding in that group. JL Skinner, safety / linebacker. See how you can work him in. And then just getting Lupke, Landers, some weapons / special teams contributors for some depth there. And here we go with the Tennessee Titans, starting with Paris Johnson. With the quarterbacks gone, not trading up for one, just grab the best offensive lineman on the board at the time. Paris Johnson, boom, starting right or left tackle, depending on what you do with Andre Dillard. Or if you want Petit Frere to play tackle, he comes in, plays guard, boom. Darnell Washington, basically a 6th offensive lineman / long-term starter at tight end, can be a great contributor early on in the red zone and in the running game. Then you get Derek Hall, comes in, he's that 3rd edge rusher with Harold Landry coming off the ACL, and Arden Key, I think, is the one they just signed. So he can be that 3rd guy for them. Xavier Hutchinson, they need wide receiver help, so they can get a guy on day 3 who can come in, maybe be a contributor. Hutchinson, Traylon Burks, Kyle Phillips, not early on, not that great, but they're young enough. Maybe you can develop them. Chris Rodriguez, a different type of running back to have in there. Probably a number 3 running back. Mix him in there on special teams as well. Same thing with Anthony Johnson out of Virginia. Same idea for the cornerback position. And there it is. All 32 teams, 7 rounds. Pretty much pointless because we all know that almost none of those picks are going to actually happen at all. But I did it anyway. And make sure you guys come back to this channel during the actual draft weekend because I'll have reaction videos to some of the picks. I'll have a day 2 mock draft that'll come out the morning of Friday morning following the real picks that happen on the Thursday. So I'm going to stay up and do that and edit it and post it and be miserable at my 9 to 5 on the Friday, but good thing it'll be a Friday, right? And then we'll get into draft grades, videos, subsequently once the draft has concluded based upon my own assessments and my own, rankings of certain players. And then it's the deep dive series. So make sure you guys stay close, locked into the channel for that. And the only way we can do that, subscribe, like the video, push it out the algorithms. It's going to be a fun spring and summer leading into the next season. So see you guys throughout it. Thanks for being here.